With over 20 years in the business, one of the reasons it got me involved in to start doing a YouTube channel, and that was to try to show people the correct way to diagnose first and then fix last. Because one of the biggest things that I saw taking place was there were a lot of people fixing, but very few doing an actual diagnostic. And you can learn two different ways, okay? You can learn the right way and then be able to handle any machine that comes in front of you, or you can learn to fix and be shooting in the dark. And what do I mean by that? I mean, like, if you had a problem where your stomach bothers you, right? You went to the doctor's going to run diagnostic tests, going to have blood work drawn, maybe urine samples, this and that. But what he's doing is he's diagnosing what it is instead of trying to fix. He's not saying, okay, report tomorrow to the OR. We're going to cut your stomach open and get to the bottom of this. No, they don't. And if they did, it'd be malpractice galore. Because a lot of times during the diagnostic mode, it brings out that, okay, maybe you're lactose intolerant, and it's because that is what's causing your problem, and no surgery is needed. You just got to change your diet around a little bit, right? But all of that stuff was done without being too invasive, but trying to figure out what exactly is taking place. If you can keep that thought process and that mentality when it comes to small engine repair, you're going to go places. And one of the biggest things that I teach and why I teach it is because I want you guys, even you do-it-yourselfers, homeowners that have no experience whatsoever, if you watch a lot of my videos, especially the ones that are on actual compression, fire, fuel, and air, you will learn that you can diagnose any engine and find out exactly what's going on in a rather quick way, right? So today we're going to devote to why I think the basics need to be covered first before the fix-it mode ever steps in. So let's start off with, if you haven't seen my channel, this is new to you. If you have seen my channel, it's a lot of repeat content because I keep trying to push the subject. And that is, first thing you need to own in your toolbox is a compression tester. And why do I tell you need to own one of these in your toolbox? Even you do-it-yourselfers, get one of these. They can be found on eBay, Amazon, Harbor Freight, Temu. You know, I'm running a shop, so I invest in better ones. I've got 3 compression testers here. And why do I have 3? Because at times these O-rings can go bad, or it's like a valve stem part in there that they go bad too, and they're replaceable on most of the higher models. So if I get a low compression on this, the first thing I'm going to do is grab my other one, throw it on, and see if it's giving me the same compression. And you're going to say, well, what kind of compression are we looking for? Okay. If we do a compression test on an engine, if it's one of the older machines, it's going to be 100 or better. And why does it have to be 100 or better? Because it needs that combustion to get the right air, fuel, and pressure to fire to run that engine. If the compression gets too low, which is normally where a valve or where a ring's inside, then it's going to get what we call blow by, okay? But if we're getting low compression, we're going to go check the valves, right? That's still diagnostic. On the newer machines, it's 70 or better. On the Predator machines and the Chinese machines, their sweet spot seems to be 55 to 60, and they will run. But you need to know that information. Because if you didn't know that information and you were just going by, it's got to be 125 PSI or better, and any machine that came in front of you didn't get to that, you'd be tossing out perfectly good machines. So not only doing compression tests, but understanding why you're doing the compression test and what the compression PSI should read. Okay. And when you do that, you want to have the engine turn over at least 4 or 5 times. If you're pull starting it, 4 or 5 times. And then see where you're at. If we don't have compression, the next logical step is we need to check the valves and rule them out. Okay. And the valves, you can set clearances, and there's a lot of YouTube videos out there that I think are really good at talking to you about how to adjust valves. Top dead center, and then get your clearance on your intake and your exhaust. If it's a twin, you're going to have 2 sets of valve covers and valves. Okay, so you got to understand that. A single, you're just going to have an intake and exhaust. On your twins, you're going to have one for each jug that's coming out. So if we can get by this point of where we do have enough compression, we're going to go on to fire. And it's really important that during this mode, you need to understand what's the driving behind it. We're trying to find out if you're getting current from the flywheel to the coil and over to the plug. We're not concerned about whether the plug is firing at this point. Changing the plug is fixing something, right? But if we find out that we've got a good spark, we can go on to fuel. If we're not getting good fire, then we have to start trying to figure out, okay, why are we not getting fire? And a lot of people will jump to, okay, it's got to be the coils. So let's replace the coils. But the problem with replacing the coils, and then you order the coils, you get them in, you put them in, and now you got the same thing. You're not getting any fire because you went from diagnostic mode to fix too quick. You did. That's why you need to kind of follow the logic of being diagnostic. The impulse is the fix. That's what a lot of YouTubers are doing. They're fixing. They're not diagnosing what the issue is. They're throwing things at the wall and hoping that it sticks. And I can tell you right now, if you run a repair shop like that, you're not going to be in business long because customers are going to feel like you're screwing them. And in a way, you are, okay? If you order a set of new coils for that lawnmower, and if you had done the regular diagnostic on it, and that is pulling the wires, the ground wires off from the coil, you'd have found out that those coils were firing perfectly. It was on the harness side and all the safety switches. If you took them off and you still had no fire, the other place to look is the flywheel. Is it the contacts where the impulse and the coils sit? Is it rusted? Do you need to take some emery cloth? Do you need to check the gap? The gap is important. I can tell you here at the shop, when we drop the coil in or reset it, we use a business card and snug it right up as tight as you can get it with that business card to it's kind of the impulse piece sticks out a little farther than the rest of the flywheel. You want to get your coil in that right tight with a business card in between, and then tighten them down. That's pretty much the clearance on most coils. But I guess what I'm trying to get at is with doing a diagnostic, you're not parts replacing. Being a parts replacer is the worst thing going. And not only for you, your customer, you're wasting time, their money, your money, because sometimes you don't get paid for it, right? But no, we have a number of different things that we need to take a look at that are not fixing, we're just checking. If we end up with compression, fire, the next thing is fuel. How old is the fuel? And our shop policy is we dump it all. 2 strokes, not as bad. And I'm not a spokesman for these folks. I don't know anybody from this company, but the ones that are making PRI-G seems to work. We've had less issues even here on the farm and at the shop working on stuff by using that. So we treat all gas that comes through with it. Two-stroke, for some reason, doesn't break down as bad and as quickly as four-stroke. But that's not to say that two-stroke fuel can be bad. Yes, it can. So I've spent, Claude, my other mechanic, has spent hours going around and around and around only to come all the way back around to fuel because we checked everything else and everything is fine. So we end up dumping the fuel, putting fresh fuel in, getting the lines all cleaned out, and voila, now it's running. It's a progressive step going down. And if you can think about it like a doctor, and you complaining your chief complaint isn't what is he's interested in at that point. It's ruling everything else out to pinpoint, and then if you need to have surgery, he will schedule it. But people just don't, doctors are not going to just start cutting on you because you say you got a pain here, right? They're going to do a lot of tests. And that's what we have to do as a repair shop, is we need to do a lot of tests before we decide to turn a wrench. In the comments, because I'll be honest, I'm not a hypocrite. I have for years did the fix it and no diagnostic. It was, okay, I've seen this before, so I'm going to go right to it. I'm going to just start, and it starts costing a lot of money, and you still are chasing your tail. If you have a progression down through a set of steps to say, this is, clear this one first, go to the next, clear that one, go to the next, clear that, go to the next, and down through until you get to the air system. Your system has to run, those mowers, chainsaws, everything are run on a certain air to fuel mixture, and that's controlled by what's coming through the air breather. If it's plugged, you're going to get rich and it's going to act like it's flooding. If you don't run an air filter on it, it's going to run lean and it can cause damage to that piece of equipment. So in the comments, how often can you remember an example of where you went to fix something and then it turned out to be something totally different that you didn't think because you weren't diagnosing? On that note, you guys have a great day.